You're watching Channel Z, the world's leading zombie apocalypse channel. Broadcasting live from Studio Z.
Makes me act the way I do.
Hello, from the Black Label Movement bunker in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Channel Z's newest show, Unreal World, where we celebrate and explore the intersections and collaborations of artists and scientists as we come together to try and solve and respond to the wicked challenges that we face in this world. Also are looking to prepare and respond to the zombie apocalypse, but doing so by having a little fun. I'm Unreal World host Carl Flink, the artistic director of Black Label Movement, a dance company based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And you just saw an excerpt from our piece called Hit, which is a piece that comes directly from our collaboration with University of Minnesota biomedical engineer David Odie. And I'd like to bring David Odie on now to join us in a conversation. Hey, David.
Hey, Carl. Good to be here.
How are you doing today? Good to see you.
Pretty good. I would love to be with you in your hazardous bunker, but my hazmat suit is out at the dry cleaner, so.
I'm glad to hear that.
You guys, we have some intrusions coming from some others. We're not sure.
I thought it was all in my brain, actually.
Yeah, somebody's, there's an audio problem.
Okay.
Anybody running something in the background that might be interfering with the sound. It could be a live YouTube of this going on. Carl, do you have anything running in the background?
I have nothing going on in the background, but I'm going to close everything out.
It could be a live YouTube of this going on. Carl, do you have anything running in the background?
I'm checking right now to see what might be going on. How's that? Have I disappeared? Oh no. Am I back? Great. All right, David. So nothing like a first show to have a few technical difficulties. So it's great to see you. So David, you and I have now been collaborating for 10 years as a dance maker and a scientist working together. One of the things that we've done as we've explored this time together is we've developed a technique called body storming. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what we've done with body storming, and then we'll show a little clip of that to give the audience a sense of what body storming is.
Yeah, we in my lab we study a lot of cellular processes, like how cells crawl around and things like that, and how they divide. And we built computer models for those processes. But that those kind of exist in digital space. Why not make them real? And that's what we've been doing with you, Carl, as you know. And it basically puts the molecules, the cells, into motion.
Right. And one of the things that I think we really connected early on is when you and I first met, whenever you talked about the research you were doing, it was amazing that you could never stop moving. Whenever you were describing the research, you were always moving your body in ways that not only you were describing the phenomenon with words, but you were also describing with your physical body language. And that's actually the thing that caused me to click and say, there's something more here that we could do. Maybe because in the world of choreography, everything that we're doing is about space, time, and energy. And everything you were talking about was space, time, and energy as well. And I realized that maybe we could use choreographic strategies to create models or to choreograph your research. And so, can you talk a little bit about, how we started engaging in that process?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people don't appreciate, or I didn't appreciate when I started on my scientific journey, is the randomness that exists at the molecular cell level. We like to think of things as very ordered, and in the dance world, I guess I would think of ballet, something that's smooth and graceful. But when you get down to it, at the molecular cell level, things are noisy, they're chaotic, they look kind of random, and yet out of that, there's still some order. So that was what we tried to do, is let's see if we can't take our ideas and actually simulate them, not on the computer, but with people.
Yeah, and one of the ways we started with that is by trying to physicalize Brownian motion, and that's actually become kind of the warm-up we do now for a body storm. And so what I'd like to do is have our producer Pam roll our body storming clip so the audience can see an example of what body storming might look like in real life. Great, thank you. Before we talk a little more about body storming, David, I see in our comments section someone asking about what is Brownian motion. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh, did I say that? Man, okay.
No, I think I said it actually, but I'm going to let the scientists talk about it.
Well, there was a scientist, Brown, who was looking through a microscope and saw that small objects would move around just kind of like on their own. And it was chaotic and random. And so he noted that motion, and people started to name it after him. They call it Brownian motion.
Great, thanks for that. So, we just saw an example of body storming actually at a conference that you organized. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what we were doing with that particular conference and applying body storming, so that maybe the scientists and artists involved who are are with us today can get a sense of how we're bringing this system to others.
Yeah, you could see in that video clip, people were pushing on each other and stuff like that. We were trying to simulate how cells grow and expand, but also can move effectively randomly, like Brown described. So we call them Brownian. And you put those together along with the immune system, and that's what drives tumor growth. We're trying to capture all that and the scientists' ideas, but the people who were there were not just dancers; they were scientists like myself, also the clinicians, the people who see the patients, and actually in some cases, patients and their caregivers were involved all in the same space. We just don't have places like that where we can bring all these different communities together in one space and talk about the same thing.
So one of the things that we're finding with body storming is that it's an incredible platform for collaboration and creating those kind of cross-disciplinary and cross-community encounters and discussions. And I think that's, I mean, to one of the things that I found really moving about that particular body storming was the fact that there was actual patients present who were a part of the conference, but also a part of the body storm model that we were developing at that moment. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of bringing patient voices and bodies into these conversations?
Yeah, I think it can work both ways. Certainly from scientists' point of view, patients are kind of an abstraction unless it's part of our own personal life, but then it's not connected to our actual work. So that do our actual work with the people that we're trying to help is very powerful. And I think we're hoping to see what effect that can have on people as they're battling and suffering from these oftentimes devastating diseases. And to answer Neil's question, yes, you can be a dendritic cell. I'm partial to DCs too, so.
Well, and also Liz's comment that this seems like embodied learning. We actually talk about this as an embodied research, embodied communication, and embodied learning. So thanks for that observation. We're hoping that we can use this platform for multiple ways of encounter between not only scientists and artists, but also the advocates for patients and the patients themselves. So hopefully this platform has multiple uses. Right now, it's been pretty much a research tool between David and I, and maybe we should talk a little more about that. That body storming itself is not a tool that competes with computer programming or whatnot, but it's a potential add to the scientific repertoire for research, because some of the values of body storming is that it can be done very quickly, whereas programming can take weeks or months to get done quickly. It also allows the scientists to go inside of their own body storm. As we saw in the video, you were actually in one of the body storms itself. And it allows for this collective hive mind that everybody who's in the room participating in that body storm can offer their observations to you as the scientist about the model that we're building with you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity to have that kind of conversation. I think for some of us scientists, we feel constrained by this world that we only just operate up here in our brain, and you write papers, but you're not allowed to engage your body. And like you said, Carl, and I played sports. My bunker here is the Nerf bunker.
Nice.
And I got my hoop. Whoa, that's way off. Okay, try again. There we go.
Awesome.
Yeah, we want to engage our bodies. That's how, we learn, we think, we communicate. So, and to have that opportunity to do that with patients is incredibly powerful.
Well, we started the show with that excerpt from HIT. And one of the things that you and I have found really exciting is that in our collaboration together, it hasn't been a one-way relationship where the dance artists are simply serving your scientific research through body storming and other activities, but that your science is actually feeding back into the dance making that I and Black Label Movement do together. So I have a couple of movers that I'd like to introduce and bring into the conversation. So first off, we have longtime Black Label mover, Patrick Jeffrey. Patrick, are you there? Oh, okay, great. He's in his appropriate Black Label bunker attire. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. Have you been spelunking?
How did you know?
Yes, great. So, and for those who don't know what spelunking is, that's cave exploration and all, and I'm sure Patrick's particularly good at that. Patrick, how long have you been with Black Label Movement?
I joined Black Label in 2010.
And one of the things that's exciting is you were actually in the original cast of HIT and also have been with us since we started body storming. So you have a depth of experience. Can you just say a couple things about, how body storming has affected you as a dance artist?
Yeah, it was always nice getting into body storming because you just meet a lot of different people. I don't really hang out with scientists, and so getting to meet new people and show them kind of our world while learning a lot about their world always really excited me. I never did that well in science, but getting into being part of a cell or the experiment really solidified it for myself. And then kind of learning about how the cell worked and how chaotic it was really impacted my performance and hit, and kind of gave me a new way in rather than just my own understanding of the dance piece.
Awesome. Well, we'll actually talk more about just that, of getting into HIT and kind of motivation and intention that our scientific collaboration helps drive for you. But first, I'd like to bring our final guest of the day, Black Label Movement Managing Director and longtime mover, Crystal Edwards. Whoa. Hi, Crystal. It looks like you're in a particularly safe space since you're not in your Black Label appropriate hazmat outfit today. So
I'm feeling very safe away from the zombies currently.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that. You also were an original cast member of HIT, and maybe you could talk a little bit about when we first performed HIT. It was a particularly unique space that we did that in.
Yes, in the cage. So yes, I joined Black Label Movement in 2010 and had the opportunity to create with David and the scientists and learn about science and be engaged in it in a different way than I never was before, a lot like Pat. But we were able to perform HIT inside of a cage. Gosh, Carl, how big was that cage?
It was about 20 by 15 by 15 feet high, a chain link box.
Yeah, a big cage around us. So we did a lot of body storming inside the cage, but we actually performed HIT and were able to use the chain link fence to bounce off of. So as the cells, we almost had a constraint that we didn't normally have before when performing the piece, just like our cells in our body have our body and, skin as our constraint. So that was pretty incredible to feel the chaoticness within a confined space, besides just an open stage, which we performed on it many times as well.
Yeah, so for our audience, if you can throw your memory back 15 minutes when you saw that excerpt of the 4 Black Label movers doing HIT, when Crystal and Pat first did it, they were actually in a cage. So as they're moving through the choreography, they're bouncing off a chain link fence, and you're hearing that sound, and it actually does have the feeling of a WWE cage match. But David, can you talk a little bit about why we built that cage in the first place and what we called it?
Yeah, I mean, why we built it, we wanted to make it have a permanent space, that was a place where we could hang out and collaborate. If I recall, there was a rope in there too, swinging around. You could just swing around on that. So you had to kind of keep your eyes open. It just, it created that boundary, like Crystal was saying. I think that was really important to appreciate that, the cell has a boundary. That's what defines it. And that everything that happens has to happen within that space.
Right, and that cell, literally the reason why we called it the cell was because it allowed us to go 3-dimensional in our movement. We did have ropes tied across the cube, and so movers could climb up ropes, climb up the sides of the fences as we were doing body storms with you. So we were actually able to add even new layers of complexity into our body storms, and that gave us even more ability to kind of create effective models for your research. Can you talk a little bit about how you've applied body storming in some of your research specifically?
Yeah, and I also see Carlo's question about membranes facilitating. Yeah, there's that question of going from 2D, like a surface, to 3D. And I would say that the 2D, that's what you normally think of dance, and I thought we can't add the third dimension. It's too complicated. But Carl, like, one thing I've learned from this collaboration is artists have creativity and imagination that exceeds what we have as scientists, and that adds another dimension. literally the third dimension in this case. The thing that we've learned a lot of things, but I'll just give one example is, what happens when you're not just two molecules reacting, but you're surrounded by other molecules that are doing their own thing at the same time. How does that influence the ability of those two molecules to ever connect with each other in the first place? And once they are connected, how long they stick together? Would that depend on that environment? And there was the initial prototype simulations that we did in with the body storming activity that led to actual computer simulations, which then led to a paper that basically summarized our findings from that.
Yeah, and so one of the really important things that we've discovered in our collaboration is that we're actually doing substantive research in both of our realms. David's work is feedbacking into our dance making, but these body storms aren't simply making dances about David's science, but we're making models that he's applying in his research in effective ways. And that's been a really exciting thing. I want to kind of turn the course a little bit back to Crystal and Pat, because one of the things we had to do is when David described the interior of the cell, as he did earlier, he actually described it as this remarkably violent, catastrophic space. It wasn't some organized march or ballet of particles moving in beautiful unison, but it was more about collisions and just the violence inherent in what I guess would be called a healthy or functioning cell. And we had to develop an impact technique. And Crystal or Pat, maybe Crystal start, and then Pat, why don't you jump in? Talk about a little bit about that impact work that we developed.
Yes. When David started describing this, of course, all of us are like, yes, this sounds amazing. Because that is the nature of Black Label Movement movers, as we're called. We hit each other a lot. We had to learn how to hit each other, just like the cells smash into each other and bounce right off. We had to find safe ways to be able to do that without being able to wear football pads like we see in professional sports. We didn't have that luxury, so we had to figure out how can we hit each other and our bodies respond in a safe way that's going to create the same collisions, kind of mirror these same collisions that we're learning about and trying to model in these cells. So we have a rule when we are hitting each other, is that if you get hit by someone, you also get to hit them. So it was helpful to be able to feel the impact coming at you, and then to also be able to give that impact back and understand how your body needs to receive it, and also how much force you need to give and let come into your body. So it's really exhilarating to be hit in a safe way, I will say. Carl has hit me and Patrick has hit me, and I've hit both of them. Even David has been hit by all of us as well. So it was a learning experience, but no one was injured or hurt in the process. We really found ways to accept impact into our bones and our beings without actually injuring each other.
When we started it out, I think sumo suits may or may not have been in part of it. And I think there was talk about like some Kevlar or something at one point, some armor. So we went to like level 1,000, and we're like, okay, now let's come back to what we can actually deal with. So there's 4 stages of touch. There's kind of a follicle, which is your hair, skin, muscle, and then bone. So when we're hitting each other, first of all, we want to use as much surface area as we can. So if we're using our whole body to hit somebody, we're going to use as much as we can. Points are not fun, but when you really use all of this and then like quickly move through all of those stages, it takes away a lot of you still get the effect of the impact, you just don't feel it as receiving it as hard as an actual punch. So we spent a lot of time with that.
Yeah, one of the amazing things that we discovered about our hit practice and our impact work is that it requires a level of trust that is extraordinary to actually, first of all, be comfortable with hitting someone and also receiving a hit. It requires just an immense amount of work together and building the trust that the person knows what they're doing and also is actually taking care of you to hit you properly. So a lot of work has gone into supporting this violent world that exists in David's cellular research. And so that then fed back into us creating an entire piece called Hit that explored kind of the emotional effect of seeing that kind of contact between humans. And I think that's a really interesting intersection point, is to realize that something can be having a scientific purpose, but also can resonate back through a different lens and become a really powerful artistic element in a dance. I do love Neil's comment about cellular fight club, or
the first rule.
The first rule of cellular fight club.
It is our rule.
Build trust. Well, I guess actually the first rule is if you hit, you get hit back. So just so everybody in the audience knows, whenever I'm making the work and I hit someone, they hit me back. I have hit David and David has hit me. So it's just kind of this mutual hitting event. So yeah. But David, can you talk a little bit about what it was like for you when you first went into one of your body storms and actually experienced being inside a model, when you've almost always looked at things through microscopes and very small scale environments?
Carl, it was powerful. I mean, the power of art making to make it real. I'd spent years, like decades, thinking about these parts of the cell that I was very focused on. And then I got to be one of those parts. And it just it was so overwhelming at a certain point. It brought tears to my eyes. And actually right now, I feel like my eyes are tearing up just thinking about it. That's the kind of emotional impact that, I mean, we don't experience too often as scientists. Sometimes we do actually, but it really was great to experience that. I wish every scientist could have that experience.
Yeah, I remember that moment in rehearsal when you actually dropped to a knee, and I it immediately came to mind Sam Neill in Jurassic Park when he first saw the dinosaur appearing on the screen, and I went up. I literally, I thought something was wrong with you, and you actually were crying because the moment was so profound to you. And I think that one of the things that we've learned with our embodied research is that when we involve the entire body, not just the mind, but we bring the physical body, the spiritual body, and the intellectual body together, there's many more experiences that come from that exploration, and to see you, I mean, just literally visualize your science in front of you at the human scale for the first time. It was profound for me to see, and for you. Patrick and Crystal, talk a little bit more about the exhilaration of being in HIT. Maybe one experience each of you had. I can think of some that you've had, but talk a little bit more about the exhilaration of being inside HIT.
I think for me, there's this one part where we're walking in a circle, and then there's a series of hitting, and this woman gets pushed towards me, and she squats, and I grab her between her legs, and I throw her over my head. And hearing Carl say that, I was just like, "You want what to happen now? Okay, all right, yeah, sure." And we have a rule now where you get 5 minutes to talk about things, and after that, you just got to do it, because there's only so much you can talk about in dance before you have to try it and see what works and what doesn't. And I just remember one day, we were like, "Let's try throwing her a little farther." I was like, "Okay." And so the dancer ran at me, and I just chucked her, and she went not over the person that caught her, but further. It was close. And so I would always turn around and kind of watch the landing early on, just to see, like, oh, did I do it right? Is everything okay? And that day it taught us a lot about how much farther we could push it. And then, we have spotters and things that help to keep us safe. That day was a good day.
Cool. Quick one from you, Crystal, before we close.
Yeah, I remember making that exact lift and being thrown over a head, which was amazing. But I think just the idea that Pat just ended on for me is what it is. How much farther can we push? How much more can we throw our bodies across the space and through each other to then get bounced back in the opposite direction? All of those moments are just incredible to be a part of. Makes me feel closer to the work of the art, but also the science and the actual molecules that we've discovered and learned from.
Awesome. Great. Well, David, Crystal, and Pat, I can't thank you enough for joining us on our first episode of Unreal World. We are looking forward to having Unreal World coming back on every other month or every month moving forward. And so we're looking forward to connecting with other artists and scientists and their experiences. So if you are one of those groups, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And also, we will be bringing Dave back and other movers from Black Label to talk about our other experiments with him. I also wanted to mention that today's performance is a part of ASU's Innovation Quarter. And if you're signed up for the Innovation Quarter, do not forget to join us for an informal chat via Zoom with Channel Z creators from noon to 12:30. 11 to 11:30 Mountain Time and 12 to 12:30 Central Time. And you'll get to see how the sausage is made in the behind the scenes, or as you've seen during the show, in front of the scenes. So with that, I can't thank Athena and the Channel Z folks enough for the opportunity to bring Unreal World to you. And with that, I'll sign off from the Black Label Movement Bunker in Minneapolis, Minnesota. See you next time.
Crazy, but it seems so logical. I can't deny that there is something supernatural with you.